Hello, I'm Derek Anderson here with your weekly crypto roundup. In this week's edition, we're going to talk about Bitcoin's sink below the $6,000 mark and why some financial experts are afeared. We're also going to talk about Andreas Antonopolous and why he thinks that a Bitcoin ETF may not be as good an idea as a lot of us think it is. We're also going to talk about Venezuela's new bolivar, backed by the petro, the first state-run cryptocurrency in history, and what it could mean for the future of Venezuela. Those are our headlines. Let's get to the details. So, top of our headlines, the Bitcoin drop creates panic, but it makes up most of its losses. After suffering a significant panic-inducing drop on Tuesday, the price of Bitcoin rose to over the $6,400 mark, proving that the market still has a distaste for Bitcoin valued at less than $6,000. A few altcoins showed some particularly inspiring resilience, coming back from a months-long steady decline on renewed optimism that the markets are only down and not out. Some of the biggest gainers over the last week were Ontology, ONT on the markets at 69%, Nano on the markets at 62%, VeChain, VET on the markets at 58%, and Populous, PPT on the markets at 29%. In stark contrast to last week's sea of red, several coins managed to post gains over the past 7-day period, cautiously signaling that the worst of this year's bear market might finally be over. Bitcoin's high volatility remains worrisome, as intraday swings of hundreds of dollars remain quite common. On CNBC, moneyman Jim Cramer went so far as to declare that the tide has turned against Bitcoin, after it briefly sank below $6,000 earlier in the week. Cramer stopped short of saying that Bitcoin was dead, or out of the picture entirely, but did lament on how far it had continued to fall during the course of 2018. Also not bullish on Bitcoin's immediate future was Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, who remarked in an interview with Bloomberg, quote, "I think it will be quite some time before you cross the street to Starbucks in the US and pay with crypto," end quote, in spite of the growing trend of businesses worldwide adopting Bitcoin. Armstrong also made the estimation that only about 10% of all cryptocurrency is actually used for real-world activities, with the other 90% being tied up in speculative ventures like trades and long-term investments. Next up in our headlines, we have Andreas Antonopolous saying that a Bitcoin ETF is a terrible idea. Declaring their stance against the proposed Bitcoin ETF is media personality and Bitcoin expert Andreas Antonopolous, who believes that such an idea goes against one of the core principles of Bitcoin. Antonopolous is a widely acclaimed author, public speaker, and general evangelist of Bitcoin, first rising to prominence in 2013 when he appeared in an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. In 2014, Antonopolous came to the defense of Dorian Nakamoto after he was mistakenly outed by Newsweek as being the inventor of Bitcoin, starting a Bitcoin fund to assist him and his family to deal with the negative fallout created by this false story. In a Q&A video he created on Patreon, he explained his case as to why he didn't believe the ETF is a good idea, though he admitted it will probably happen anyway. Quote, "ETFs fundamentally violate the underlying principle of peer-to-peer money, where each user is not operating through a custodian, but has direct control of their money because they have direct control of their keys. Your keys, your Bitcoin. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin. ETF is a multi-billionaire dollar, not your keys, not your Bitcoin vehicle." End quote. Among the experts' reasoning as to why he was against it, Antonopolous said that the ETF could be extremely damaging to the ecosystem of Bitcoin, since such an ETF would be required to hold as much Bitcoin as it was creating a market capitalization for on the stock market. This would take a sizable chunk of Bitcoin out of circulation, which would sit dormant in addresses controlled by the ETF managers, while its dollar value was traded as shares. For more on this story, we'll include the link directly to Andreas Antonopoulos' Q&A in the description below. Next up in our headlines, Venezuela pegs their new national currency to the petro. In an unprecedented turn of events, the government of Venezuela, facing economic hardship after US-led sanctions and 100,000% inflation woes, is revaluing their national currency, chopping off 5 decimal points from the bolivar and tying the value of its replacement, to be called the strong bolivar, to its state-led cryptocurrency named the petro, PTR on the markets. The move is accompanied by a statement from the president promising that the country's minimum wage will be raised to the price of 1/2 petro per month. or approximately $30. Covered at length in an earlier article on CoinClarity.com, the petro is, in theory, backed by Venezuelan oil reserves and was sold during an ICO process earlier this year, of which President Nicolas Maduro claims was a great success, with $5 billion in ICO sales. Maduro blames the United States, a country which has expressly prohibited its citizens from taking part in the petro ICO, for orchestrating the collapse of the bolivar and continuing the country's financial downfall. The idea is that by tying the country's fiat currency to a cryptocurrency, it'll be more stable and less prone to manipulation by outside forces. In theory, the petro will be readily accepted by any number of Venezuelan businesses, easy to purchase through the country's state-operated cryptocurrency exchanges, and represent a new paradigm in personal finances to be enjoyed by every citizen within the country. The blockchain record of the coin, however, a token on the NEM network, paints a different picture, with only $100,000 to $200,000 worth of tokens purchased during the ICO, and 0 of the tokens actually transferred to ICO participants. What remains clear is that the next few months will be a very interesting time in the history of the struggling nation, with Venezuela emerging as participants of the first state-sponsored crypto revolution in finance, or host to one of the biggest ICO frauds of all time. And in case you missed it, this year at CoinClarity, we've been dedicating some time to start engaging in interviews with individuals who have direct experience in the field of cryptocurrency, in a wide variety of capacities. For those who are perhaps not regular visitors to the CoinClarity.com website, we want to recap and link for you here a few of the interviews that we've conducted over the past few months. First up, we have Ben Arnold, a cryptocurrency investor. Residing in sunny Honolulu, Hawaii, Ben makes frequent trips to Las Vegas to fulfill a semi-professional career as a part-time gambler. Ben is the kind of guy who likes to bet big and go home big, a strategy that paid off handsomely in early 2017 with some well-timed investments that he made in Bitcoin and Ether. Ben's take on success represents a category of everyday, average Joe investor who managed to get in at just the right time and get out before hodling on for just a little bit too long. Next up, we have our interview series with Colin Goltra, parts 1 and 2. Coins PH head of cryptocurrencies, American by birth and Filipino by blood, Colin's company, Coins.ph, represents an enterprise that is actually successfully using Bitcoin for what it was originally intended by Satoshi Nakamoto, improving the lives of the general population by cutting out costly financial middlemen. Over 3% of the Philippines' national population has a Coins.ph account, making it one of the most penetrating Bitcoin wallet providers to ever be developed. During our 2 interviews with Colin, he describes what makes Coins.ph so successful and valuable to its many users. Lastly, and I apologize, Bruno, if I'm murdering your last name, we have Bruno Kushinskas? Charity founder, scam buster, and forum legend, Bruno got his start as a Bitcoiner in early 2011, shortly after Bitcoin's founder, Satoshi Nakamoto, disappeared from the public eye. He has become firmly entrenched as a staple in the forum community in years since, having a celebrated career as a non-professional buster of cryptocurrency-related scams of all kinds. We talked to him about how he got started, his views on Bitcoin, his thoughts about Satoshi Nakamoto, and also the origins of his own upcoming ICO product. That's it for our headlines. If you'd like to see more about the topics that I'm not covering in the weekly roundup, then head over to CoinClarity.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter, which will include a copy of this video. Like and comment below if you like this video and want to comment, and make sure to hit that subscribe button for the latest news, reviews, and updates on the world of cryptocurrency. I've been Derek Anderson, and until next time, stay classy, people.